Hey there, Wendy here with Jazzydoodledesigns, and by request I've had quite a few people reach out and want another color along in Teresa Goodrich's Garden Gnomes, because who can resist these cute little critters, right? So, the page I'm going to do is this one. It's the greenhouse page, and it was requested by the KC0811, and I chose Brute Fooner pencils out of the ones that she listed as her requests to work in this book. I try and mix it up a little bit because I know not everyone has Prismas, not everyone has Polys, not everyone has whatever pencil, so I do try and do a mix. So I thought maybe we would do this in Brute Fooner. I have the Brute Fooner squares. Mine actually have the actual English name on them. So I do know that, they originally started out without the names. So I will try to list them with numbers. I usually just list names, but I will try and list with numbers since not everyone has the names. So let's dive in and bring some life to this page, shall we? Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is morning here as I voice over this color along. Welcome to all of my viewers. I appreciate you being here. If you're new here, a couple of things I like to know. Everything is in 2x speed, so if you want to slow it down, you can press the little cog settings on YouTube and adjust the video so that you can see it in real time. Also, I try and let you know what I'm doing, or we chat about things. Sometimes I give fun little facts about things that we're coloring. So when I am talking, you will see the talking girl head icon in usually the upper left-hand corner. Sometimes I move it if it's in the way, but you will see it somewhere on the screen. And if I set something to music, it will go away. That way you don't miss any dialogue in case you don't like the music I pick out. So today we are working with Brute Fooner squares. To those of you that regularly watch the channel, I bet you are excited to see something besides a fine liner review. I know I was kind of happy to move along as well, although I am really enjoying reviewing those pens, and I'm looking forward to doing the roundup where we do a lot of comparing. So if you're new here, check those out. I reviewed, I think, 5 different brands of fine liners. So what is happening with everybody? Around here, spring has sprung and we're starting to get some nicer weather, which is kind of nice. Our swamp cooler, which was ancient, finally gave up the ghost, and so we had to put in a new swamp cooler. And for those of you that are like, what the heck is a swamp cooler? What it does is it takes the air from outside and it, I don't know, mixes it with water, and that cools it off, and then it blows it in. This works really well in dry climates. If you had a swamp cooler and you lived in, say, North Carolina or somewhere where there's a lot of humidity, it would not work. So places like Arizona, I had a swamp cooler in Arizona, but it is significantly cheaper than air conditioning. So I will finish that in just a second, but I want to tell you what's going on the channel. So I basically am using a Prisma white pencil just because I think Prisma white is the most opaque. Now what I'm doing is I want the greenhouse to be lighter than the background, right? Because when you look like through a window or something, it's going to look a little more diffused. It's going to be lighter. If you look through something, it's not going to be quite as bold, right? So that's my idea. So everything here that would have the sky in the background, I'm going to go over with white. And then when I use that same blue pencil over it, it will automatically dilute the color, making it, even though it's the same color, it's going to be a little lighter. Now, I'm not going over the plants and things like that because that's going to be another step down the road. I am just basically essentially coloring where there is just glass or plastic, depending on how this greenhouse was built. But the idea is anywhere that is see-through without an object in between. Does that make sense? Oh, I hope so, because I'm kind of rambling. But basically, when I'm looking at the greenhouse right now, like over by where that sign is, and I'm looking, there's no plants or anything in that area, so I should be able to see the sky. So by putting the white there, and this is white too, it's just a much smaller one, and I noticed I missed some, so I just grabbed that one. But as you can see now, by just ever so slightly skimming over the white, I am putting the blue down. But look how much lighter it is. So automatically we already have started working on the glass effect of our greenhouse, or the plastic effect, or whatever, but the see-through quality of it. So that's what I was doing there. So back to the swamp cooler. Yeah, so it's a lot cheaper to use a swamp cooler than to use air conditioning. And so far, it works so much better than my old swamp cooler. I'm super stoked about that. What I'm not stoked about is it's loud. I feel like I'm in a warehouse. It's just, it's noticeably loud. And so, I don't know, maybe we got the cheapest one and that's the problem. I don't know. It's interesting to me because a few years ago we had to get a new dishwasher, and that was quite the improvement. And that dishwasher is virtually silent. It's like you don't even know it's on. So I'm kind of surprised that a significantly newer, and by that I mean 20 years or more newer swamp cooler would be louder. But it is. So now what I'm doing on screen is I'm going to go in and color everything just like you would, whatever color you want. I'm using kind of these olivey greens for these plants. I will be switching up the greens a lot in this video and trying to utilize all the various greens so that we have a little bit of interest, and by keeping it in the same color family, it doesn't get too busy. But I will say that the idea behind this is that even though it's in the greenhouse, I'm going to color it as if the greenhouse didn't exist at this point. Almost at the very end is when we'll do our quote-unquote glass effect. So anyway, that's all I'm going to be doing throughout, is just coloring it like any other page at this point. I will say, I really like how this page turned out, except for the metallic silver I end up using, and I will discuss that later on in the video. But overall, I really like how this page turned out. These gnomes are just so stinking cute. I love it. Love it. But I'm going in here with a different green this time. And I'm just going to use the darker tones here, where towards where the leaf attaches to the stem, and then a lighter tone on the edges. Okay, so since a lot of this coloring is pretty straightforward, I don't think I'm going to be doing any wildly different techniques. I thought maybe what we would do is talk about greenhouses. So I looked up some fun facts about greenhouses, and I thought I would share those with you as we move along. And then I'll pop in and out of the video if I see myself doing something I feel like I want to comment on. I've had some good feedback. I've been doing this on some of these longer color alongs because, y'all, an hour and a half is a long time to chat without somebody chatting with you. Let me move my phone. That's probably what you heard go in the background. I had it on one, like a coloring pencil tin. So that's what that was. So anyway, so some fun facts about greenhouses. So greenhouses are used to extend the growing season. And by that I mean, you can, like around here, you can't really plant outdoors. I think the rule of thumb, and y'all, I'm not a gardener, but I think the rule of thumb around here is like Memorial Day, because anything before that, you run the risk still of a frost or snow even. So Colorado can be a little temperamental that way. So when you have a greenhouse, what happens is you're able to maybe plant your plants or have your plants outdoors in your greenhouse, maybe in March or April. And then once you get into September and October, where it starts getting colder, you can keep them in your greenhouse. And that's because you can really control the climate there. You can control the temperature and the moisture level and things like that, which is what is significant in the zones, right? When you look at growing zones. So greenhouses can protect from weather. You can plant things that you otherwise couldn't grow, maybe because they have a longer growing season, like it takes longer for them to grow, or they require a higher temperature or a lower temperature than where you live. So it allows you to plant different things. And then it helps keep it pest free. So you can kind of control a little better what pests get in there. It helps conserve water. And it reduces reliance on imports, because if you can grow things at a season, so to speak, then, you don't have to buy them from somewhere else. Now, I will note that here I am using vanilla custard on these flowers that are in the doorway, so you don't have glass visually right there. So those things I am going to color with a darker shade or with more layers, depending on the pencil, because we really want those to be crisp and vibrant. And then the ones that are behind the glass, we're going to be using either a lighter shade, adding white, or just not adding as many layers so that there is a difference. Later on in the video, I will emphasize this even more, so we will discuss it then. But just know when you're coloring that section, where the doorway is, you want those flowers to be more vibrant and more crisp than the other ones. So we're kind of starting our process right now to create that greenhouse effect. Same with these vines up here. We want these to be crisp. We want them vibrant. And because these are the ones that are outside of the greenhouse. So by contrast, they're going to be more vibrant and, more defined. So anyway, back to our greenhouses. Greenhouses can range from ones that just use like a side of your house and then they're like a tent, like a lean-to. They can be a full structure like the one we're seeing here on screen. They can be really small. So maybe something that's, only 3 or 4 feet and it just has a few plants, all the way up to literally taking up acreage. So we'll discuss that later too, some of the bigger ones. Some fun things I never really thought about. Sometimes people use them to house exotic animals or, animals that need a certain climate or something. And I didn't really delve into that too much, but I did think it was interesting that they did mention it. One website said that Rome in the 1st century AD used greenhouses as sunny retreats for their wealthier families. So people would go and hang out in them because they were warmer and more climate controlled. So I thought that was interesting. As far as modern greenhouses, Holland is renowned for doing the first modern greenhouse, but they were used quite a bit ahead of that for different reasons and in a more rustic way. So they did use them. One of the stories I read was that they used them because cucumbers were supposedly like this, like a healing fruit or vegetable, however you want to classify them. And so the elite would have these greenhouses in order to grow cucumbers year round. So I thought that was kind of an interesting fact as well. Now with this plant, I am leaving the tips a little bit white. I personally kind of like the look of that myself. So I thought I would point that out. Greenhouses come in 3 different varieties, so to speak. There's a cold frame, which protects, like you would have this if you were protecting your plants from frost. Then there's hot houses, which are designed for when you need something for something like a tropical plant, so to keep things warmer. And then solariums, which are basically like enclosed rooms. So sometimes people have, I've heard them called sunrooms, or they're almost like an indoor greenhouse where it's oftentimes almost like a porched-in area that's all enclosed in glass or in plastic, and people can grow plants or have a nice sunny area to hang out in. We don't have too many of those in Colorado. They're not a huge thing, but they are like sunrooms or or enclosed porches type of thing. Now, I wanted the bottom of my greenhouse to be wood, so I'm just going in with this Thai curry and filling in the bottom 2 planks there with wood. Now, you could make this whatever you decide to construct the frame. It could all be the same color, for lack of a better word. It could be the same color there. I just thought it added some interest to have it be more of a wood tone. Okay. So greenhouses are made of polyethylene, which is really easy to work with, but the UV can damage it, so it doesn't last very long unless it's got a UV protectant put on it. They can be made of glass, which is fragile and hard to work with, and I would imagine expensive. And then polycarbonate, which can yellow over time, so forcing you to kind of need to replace it. But scientists use greenhouses. Individuals, like people that just love plants. Now here I'm just, there I just put in some little wood marks, just little hash lines. And there I'm just kind of going in between those trees, trying to fill in the gaps there so it looks like wood. And then I'm coloring the shelf. Now, if you notice, I colored the shelf with that Thai curry, but in the doorway, I've colored the shelf with sepia. Once again, just trying to distinguish the greenhouse, right? And give the illusion that we're looking through something there. And here I'm just coloring the shelf. Okay, so Netherlands, I thought was really interesting. They have over 4,000 greenhouses that employ over 150,000 workers. They have I can't read my writing. I think it's 90,000 hectares. It might be 9,000. Apologies. I looked this up the other day. But it has, they grow things and then export them. So 80% of everything they grow in those greenhouses is exported. And so that is wild to me. I mean, to employ 150,000 people, that's a lot of industry that these greenhouses are bringing to their country, and a lot of revenue in exports. So maybe later on, I will look up what they're exporting, because I'm kind of curious. But looking back in the olden times, I thought it was interesting too. The greenhouses were often built with oilcloths or even mica, which I don't know. That can't have been that easy to use. Mica, but they are relatively expensive to run, just simply because you've got to, if you're using them, for example, to keep in a cold environment to extend maybe your growing time, you're going to have to heat that some way, and then it's got to ventilate a certain way. So let's talk a little bit about how greenhouses work. So the overview says greenhouses work by allowing sunlight to pass through their transparent walls and roof, which heats up the air and the objects inside. The plant, soil, and other structures absorb the sunlight and convert it into heat energy. As the light energy strikes the objects inside the greenhouse, the wavelength changes and the heat waves can't escape. And the greenhouse's transparent structure then acts as an insulator, trapping in the heat. So this is pretty interesting because what happens is, now you've got all this trapped heat. But what if you live in a hot environment and it puts off too much heat? Then you have to regulate it, right? So whenever you have a greenhouse, you've got to constantly be ventilating it, bringing in more air, and to keep it the right temperature. So in cold environments, you might have to add a heater, but in a hot environment, you may need to add air conditioning or a mister or something like that in order to create the climate that you're looking for. So when I was researching, I found something that they're working on called smart greenhouses. With our technology continuing to evolve, it really is amazing what people come up with. So smart greenhouses take that tech and they use it to automate things like temperature and humidity and light and the CO2 levels and watering them and fertilizing them. And it automates it to give these plants the best nutrients possible, right? And so, of course, that's going to come with a price tag. But the idea is that when you start controlling these things, you get a longer grow season. You don't get weather damage, so you're not gonna, who's grown a tomato plant and then had it hail on them? Yes, I have. I know y'all are laughing because I'm not a gardener, but at the same time, I have grown things in the past. I actually enjoy growing things. I just don't like weeding and doing all of those things. And I'm kind of impatient. I want them to hurry up and grow and be done. But I love seeing other people's gardens and watching them grow and doing all the things. I just don't find it therapeutic to weed. And that's the main thing. You always have to weed. And then in my experience, I've tried to grow strawberries and the birds get them. And then, so you have to paint the rocks and put netting up and do different things. And it's like, y'all, I could be coloring right now. I could be doing some art stuff. So that's kind of how I look at it. But anyway, back on topic. But when you create these smart greenhouses, now you don't have to rely on people to water for the proper amount of time or to fertilize at the proper time. I know that my husband is he plans to fertilize when he knows it's going to rain or whatever, so he sets all that kind of stuff up. Whereas if it's in a controlled environment, you're controlling that all the time. And so that can cut costs. And your workload, because I think part of the ventilation is to get, to exchange the carbon dioxide and, oxygen levels and keep those at appropriate levels. So, you just you eliminate the human error. I know that sometimes having like a greenhouse, you can have problems with pests because if one of your plants gets some sort of bug, they can rapidly spread it to all the plants because it's such a contained environment. So you have to be exceedingly aware. You also need to be aware that some plants need to pollinate. And if your greenhouse is contained, you need to make sure that the bees and the butterflies and all the little pollinating critters can get in there and do their job. But this smart greenhouse just really sounds amazing because it talks about, collecting rainfall to help use, recycle all the water and whatnot, and solar panels can turning the sunlight into electricity and getting all the nutrients out of the soil, and how it can really boost crop yield and can accelerate the growth. And, the other thing it can do is that a lot of these are working hydroponically, meaning they don't even need the dirt. They're just growing them in water. And this allows them to farm vertically, which cuts back on the amount of soil per, like you can farm more on 1 acre than you could if you were planting them in the dirt. So I know I have a friend that's really big into plants, and she's building a system like that where she can grow her tomatoes and different things like that hydroponically. So I think that these kind of things are really can be amazing to provide opportunities for hopefully more cost effective and crops. Now, whether or not that ends up being the case is a whole different thing. But, it can, in theory, it can increase the yield. It can increase the nutrient value of these foods. And I'm kind of excited to see some of these changes. But as a consumer, I've seen quite a few greenhouses, and I think that could, if you were into gardening, that could be a really fun hobby to really extend your gardening fun, so to speak. All right, so what are we doing on the page? We've colored in some of the blue. Now, how did I decide on blue, you ask? Well, funny you should ask. I colored that one random pot early on blue. And then I thought, well, I've got that blue in there. I should incorporate that more into the picture. And so that led to me coloring, my little gnome in blue. Now you can see his shirt is still uncovered because I haven't decided what color I want his shirt to be. I feel like I've got the orange he has the orange on the carrots, so I thought that would be a nice color to bring into other parts of the picture. So that's why I chose her heart to be orange, the other gnome in the greenhouse's hat to be orange. I like to have in my pictures some continuity of colors. So if I use a color in my page, I try and use it I like odd numbers. So like in 3 objects or 5 objects. The other thing I like to do is create what's called a visual triangle, where if you look, I have the orange in the hat at the tip of the triangle, then we go down to the left for his carrots, and then over to the right to her orange heart. But what that does is it kind of helps guide the eye along the page. So we've got our greens, and then we've got those pink colors. So since I colored those flowers pink in the greenhouse, I want to bring some pink down into the bottom of the picture as well. Now, with this floor, the dirt, sorry, having a moment, with the dirt ground, I wanted the center to be slightly lighter, and then on the outside, dirt to be a little darker, once again to kind of draw the eye into the center of the picture. I really enjoy this visually myself. When I see pictures a lot, I accidentally covered his shirt, so that's what I'm doing here. I'm erasing where I thought that was part of the ground. But I like pictures that have dark, like almost like a vignette, where it's dark on the outside and then it draws your eye to the inside. I just find that visually attractive. So right now, the sky is a darker blue than our greenhouse, and I really like that effect. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do with the floor here, or the ground, is by coloring the center in the Thai curry and then using the sepia on the side, I'm just creating more visual interest. And I am going to color over all of it. You don't have to if you don't want to, but once again, now I'm bringing this chicory coffee. I'm using this real dark shade on the outside and the bottom just to, reinforce that it is darker. And I'm going to do quite a few layers here just to get it the right color that I want, right? So that's kind of how I go about deciding on my colors, is by going with colors that I know I want in the picture. Green, for example, blue sky. So I put those in first, and then I can always add stuff later. So as you can see, I haven't colored the pots in yet because I wanted to get all of the main colors on the page and then say to myself, what do I think would look good here? If you start with all the little details, sometimes when you do that, then when you add the main colors, it may not go, or it may look too busy. But that's a very subjective thing. My mom and I have very different ideas of what is attractive. We used to joke that we could pick out each other's clothes by going into a store and picking the one we didn't like, because she was, especially when I was younger, I liked more pastel type of colors and more colorful colors like turquoise and green and blues and those kind of colors. And my mom liked red and black and gray and silver. Those were the colors she liked. My aunt liked the colors I liked. My cousin, my aunt's daughter, liked the colors my mom liked. So we used to joke that maybe somebody got adopted or something. But, so everything is subjective, right? So just because I like something a certain way doesn't make it the right way to do it. Or maybe you like to color every pot a different color. and, you know, this gnome in blue and that gnome in green and the other one in red. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. So when I say things, I'm always cautious because I never want someone, when I'm telling you why I color something, I am not the coloring police. I'm not saying this is how it should be done. I'm telling you why I color it that way. And I'm assuming if you're watching this color along that maybe you like the way I colored and you're interested in that. So, but I just can't I can't emphasize that enough. It is absolutely what you like. I follow a couple of people on Instagram that have a very different coloring, shall I call them a style or palette, than I do. Most of my stuff tends to be vibrant colors. It tends to be a little bit bold. I very rarely color in pastels or muted tones. There are a couple of artists on Instagram that I follow that one does a very like dark, almost like everything. I don't want to say grunge because that's a very distinctive type of style, but like that where everything's kind of antiqued a little bit with the darker tones. And the stuff is phenomenal. It is absolutely beautiful. And there's another artist that uses very, very light, muted tones. Very, I don't want to say pastel because to me, when I think of pastel, I think of like Easter egg colors, right? Like those light blues and light yellows. This is more grays and mute turquoise and celadon green and things of that nature. And her work is stunning too. And yet those two people couldn't be more different. Or if you compare the three of us, all three of us are so completely different. And yet we each create very different things. So I can admire those things and still have my own style. So I encourage you that when you do these things, learn from each artist and take what feels good to you. If something that the artist does doesn't appeal to you, throw it out and do your own thing. I think I enjoy doing color alongs from artists because it pushes me to color a different way. It encourages me to follow not only their coloring choices, because sometimes when they pick a color, I'm like, really? Really? That's the color you chose? And then they do it, and I'm like, oh, that's amazing. I never would have put those two colors together, but I really like it. Sometimes it's how they hold their pencil or how they do a stroke that when I'm trying to follow them, I try and follow that as well. And I will see how that feels to me. And sometimes I'm like, oh, that produces a neat result. I think I'll go back to my own. Or sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe I should incorporate this a little bit more into my own coloring. So I think it's important to do color alongs. I think there's a lot of learning that can happen. But if something is like, I just, maybe you absolutely hate the color orange, it just rubs you the wrong way, then that's when you have the artistic license to go, yeah, okay, Wendy, so I'm going to be using yellow here. And I think that that's fine too. So, okay. So back to what I'm doing. So this is the raw sienna that I used on that flower pot, the longer flower pot. These are the two colors that I used there. And so I'm just drawing those into the picture as well, because that's a color I've only used once. So I decide, well, maybe I'll draw it in down here at the bottom. So once again, I'm kind of creating that visual triangle. I've got the raw sienna color in the hanging plant, and now in that longer flower pot, and now I'm bringing it in to the bottom left and kind of creating that visual triangle. Now, when I color, these are not necessarily things I think about. Like, I don't think in my head, how can I create a visual triangle? It's something that I learned in photography. It's something I learned, like when you're framing a picture. It's something that I have learned in art. It's something I'm aware of, but quite honestly, I put things where I think they'll look good, and I don't necessarily look at a color wheel. I don't necessarily pull up a color palette. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I get stumped and I'm like, what should I do here? And that's when I will go to those resources and ask myself, what would look good here? And sometimes I look at the color palette, or a color palette on Pinterest, and it will spark me, and I'll start coloring again using that. Other times I'm like, nah, that's not really what I'm going for. And it's one of those, I know it when I see it, or I know it when I feel it. I'm doing a color along with my friend Christine, and she and I picked out a page, and I put it off for a couple of weeks because every time I looked at it, I just couldn't picture the colors in my mind. And then one day I was like, yep, this is what I'm doing. And the colors just kind of spoke to me, and I'm about halfway done. Christine, if you're watching this, I'm about halfway done. Like, oh, thank the sweet baby Jesus, because I've taken forever to do this color along with her, so I appreciate her patience immensely. But that's just kind of how I work. And when I do these kind of things, I try and pull out of my brain, well, why did you do that? Well, this is why. Sometimes I'll tell you, I have no idea. It felt good. It felt right. Whatever. Oh, you know what I want to discuss with you guys? If you're still here and you haven't signed off 30 minutes ago, y'all, I hit 2,000 subscribers. It snuck up on me. So I'm going to have to do a giveaway soon, which is how I met Christine. She was my winner for my 1,000 subscriber video. So I think I'm going to do the same thing that I did that time, in which I will post a video and then I'll ask you guys to tell me what you like best on the channel or what you would like to see more of on the channel, because that really inspires me to know what you guys are interested in so I can provide that kind of content, whether it's more reviews, maybe it's less boring chat, maybe it's more chat. I used to put a lot more music. Okay, so for whatever reason, my computer decided to start recording this using a different microphone, like the one that's on the computer, which is total trash. So I'm
So I apologize. I'm doing a voiceover of a voiceover right now. But I think what I was saying was I used to put a lot of music, not a lot, but a fair amount of music on my videos. And I got requests from people that said it's hard to process music and listen at the same time, like if it was in the background, right? And so I decided, well, it's easier for me too. So I'm happy to get rid of the music. I think sometimes it makes it sound a little more professional, but I also understand that it can be distracting. I have been on videos that I felt like it really enhanced the video, and I have been on videos where I was like, oh, I really want to hear what she has to say, but I really hate the music, or I found it distracting. Maybe it was too loud, or just otherwise distracting. I also heard that people really wanted me to chat. They were like, don't worry about what you talk about. We don't care. We just like to have it on in the background. It makes me feel like I'm coloring with a friend. And so I get that. And so I do my best to provide the chatty content, which is why you sometimes will find me doing things like looking up greenhouse facts so that I have I have content for you guys that that we can chat about. But as far as the 2,000 subscribers, I can't thank you all enough. I am humbled that many people would even care what I had to say. And I have met some fantastic people through having this channel, which has been just an extremely rewarding situation for me. And the same as you guys like me to chat, I love when you interact with me. People have shared things with me on Instagram. They have shared things on my Facebook page, via personal, direct messaging. And sometimes it's things in their personal life, their gardens, products that they're using. And I absolutely adore all of that. Sometimes it's just comments on my video, what they liked or what they appreciated about the video. And it means the world to me because then I know, yes, I'm doing something that somebody else is getting value from. I think as creators, we are, I don't know, I guess I can only speak for myself, but I've heard other people say it as well. It's easy to be hard on yourself and wonder if do people like this? Should I do it? Like when I was doing those fine liners, I've done 5-liner reviews and I'm like, oh my gosh, but I've had good feedback and the people that aren't interested in it have been patient with me. And I love that about my community. You all are just the best. And so I want to give back. So I will be doing a video asking for those things that you guys are interested in. And I'll do a $50 gift card to Dick Blick. I find that works the best because you can buy anything that you want. And because they really do have the majority of things and it can be done internationally. So, for example, Christine lives in Canada, and so it was easy for her to be able to get something, and she was excited because she was able to get a product that maybe she wouldn't otherwise buy because maybe it wasn't in the budget. I'm not speaking to her personally. I have no idea what her budget is, but sometimes when you get that quote unquote free money, you don't mind spending it maybe on expensive art products, right? Because you don't feel like you have to be on the budget because it's money that wasn't coming from your food fund or the kids' college fund. Just kidding, y'all. But, so I feel like that's a good way to go. And then usually what I do is I will put it up and then we'll run it for about a week or two and allow people to have time to comment and to find it. And then what we'll do is I do a random name generator. There's an app where I can type in everybody's name and then it spins around and that's how the winner's chosen. And I felt like that worked pretty well for me last time. So that's probably what I'm going to do here. Now, kind of back to the page here. I want... Okay, are we going to have a blooper? I think we might. I encourage you to use your darker silver and gray tones on the poles that are closest to us. The ones that are through the greenhouse, you want to use your lighter grays. So you can even bring in like a black or something into the front poles, but you want to emphasize that it's being seen through. And I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is, for me, I wish I would have stopped just when I got these all colored, but before I actually used the metallic gel pen. That being said, that's kind of what I'm doing right here, is just adding in those gray tones. I can't believe how much footage I lost. Oh my goodness. I just realized that I haven't even colored the little pots. Y'all, I had voiced over almost to the end. It's a little soul crushing because now I don't know what I've covered and what I haven't covered without watching an hour's worth of coverage. So hopefully I don't duplicate myself. I do hope I don't do that. But I might. So with this beard here, I'm going in with the darker gray and just adding some flicks of color. And I definitely want to leave some white popping through. Now I'm going to go in with the lighter gray and do the exact same thing. But by keeping this to me, this is more whimsical, right? Like, I'm not going for realistic. It's just depicting, some other colors in his beard. But that's what I find works for me, especially with the garden gnomes, because they are whimsical characters. So I looked and excuse me. Sorry. I sneezed on my last video too. I wanted to bring in a little more pink, so I just, in that little bush area, added little dots, almost like the center of the flowers. And then I'm going in with this darker pink and just right where, in the center of the flower, just adding a little more depth and dimension. And then, I'm looking for the little tag to tell the color there. But I just used like a two-tone thing. Once again, keeping the shading really simplistic because this is a whimsical page. Now I wanted to bring in a little more orange. And one of the things that I try and do, and I do apologize if this is repeating, but I do kind of try and create a visual triangle. So if you look at the orange, we've got the orange of the hat up there, and then we got the orange carrots on the left, and now we've got the orange in the little heart and on our hat there, and the flower on the right hand side. It kind of creates a little triangle. You'll find that I did that with the blue, and when you do those kind of things, it really, I don't know, it's an art technique. They teach this when they do photography too, is in framing, and that you like to keep things visually in groups of odd numbers. So if you have an element on the page, if you have 3 of them, it's a little more visually interesting than if you have 4. Or 5 is more visually interesting than 4. It's really weird, but our brain actually likes the odd. And I think a lot of times is because when it's even, we try and pair them up, and our brain tries to put them, together. Now, as far as these pots, I debated a while on what to do. In fact, the whole time I was coloring, I was thinking about it. And in the end, I decided to do like a terracotta row of pots. And I did this for a couple of reasons. One, it is a nice color that we have. We've got the other colors, right? The other terracotta. But by keeping them all essentially the same color, it feels cohesive. Now I'm going in with just a shade darker and creating more visual interest by adding another tone. I'm going to make some of these pots darker, and I'm going to make some of them lighter. Some of them I'm going to add a light yellow to and lighten them up that way. But the idea is that when you look at the picture, you see a row of terracotta pots, but because I've added some of them as darker, some of them being lighter, it's not too boring. I think for me, part of my evolution as an artist has been to embrace this. And sometimes it's really hard for me because I want to add all the colors. And I know that some people can work with, they can do a whole page in 5 colored pencils. And I think that's fantastic. I tend to use more colored pencils, but I have tried to learn to rein myself in with color families, not use the whole color of the rainbow. So like on this page, we have blue tones, we have kind of the red-brown tones, and we have green, and then we have little pops of orange and pink. But the orange goes very much with the terracotta brown, and the pink. The pink is kind of an anomaly there, but I have different shades of green, and I have different shades of brown, and I have different shades of terracotta. And that adds a really nice cohesive feel to the page, because this is an extremely busy page. There is a lot going on in this. And by limiting the colors and by putting the bright, festive colors on my point of interest, which is my little gnomes, your eye is drawn to them. And all of the plants and the greenhouse and the sky and the dirt fade into the background a little bit. And we allow our gnomes to be the center stage because they are the bright pops of color on the page. If I had done all of those pots in yellow, green, red, purple, your eye wouldn't know where to go. It would be like, do I look at the red pot? Do I look at the green pot? That kind of thing. And so by unifying that, I find it visually appealing. And believe you me, I have struggled with this. And I'm sure that there are professional artists that would say, Wendy, you need to rein it in even more. But this is what I like, and this is what I enjoy. I enjoy color, and I want that. So anyway, I don't know if I said this or if it was in the deleted part, but I think it's important that you color the way that you feel happy. When you look at a page, you should like the colors that you're using. If you're not liking those colors, pick different ones. Now, I will say, looking at this right now, I feel like the chartreuse bushes are a little bright for me. We'll see what they look like at the end. I think I tone them back a little. But these pots I decided to do with the olive green, which is the greens that I used in the hanging plant that we started with. I haven't used that tone, I don't think, for anything else. And so I felt like that would be a good place to use it again would be on these pots. And I feel like it helps kind of tie that together. But I like that when these pots are done, they just kind of blend into the background and allow the plants to kind of be the center stage. Here I'm just coloring her little shovel. And I realized I had missed the little pom-pom thing on the end of her hat there. So here I'm just kind of tidying everything up, looking at what haven't I colored, like these little birds. It's pretty straightforward coloring, just the blue of the bird with a little bit of darker blue on the wings and the tail. Once again, because it's whimsical, keep it a little simple. And I'm just kind of touching up. So the little things like the heart on her hat. Going into those flowers and deciding to add a little oomph to them by adding another color. I just felt like they looked a little uncolored. Not uncolored, that's the wrong word. Unfinished, maybe. So going in, coloring in the dirt, just making those final little touch-ups. Now these rocks, I decided like you could have made them brown, like a darker brown or a lighter brown. I decided to make them gray. I feel like that adds a little visual interest to the ground. And so I just go in with the gray and then the darker gray down near the bottom to just add a little more depth and dimension. And then just kind of smoothing it out a little bit with the sepia so that they, to me, like if you look at them, they stand apart, but they don't jump out at you. And that's kind of what I was going for. Here on the sign, I'm just using the lightest color I have just to add a little bit of visual color there. Okay, I think this is the final element as far as coloring besides the greenhouse is going in and coloring our little watering spout. Now, you could definitely use your metallic pens for this because, you know, it is a metal pour spout. And what I was doing there is when I was coloring, I felt like there was like a little piece of dirt or something under the page because when I would run my colored pencil over it, it felt gritty. I didn't find anything, so I'm not sure why that did that. Excuse me. I'm boring myself, y'all. I don't know how you do it. Now, by keeping the center a little lighter, it gives the illusion of being the metal. The bigger the contrast between your colors, the shinier it'll look. So I'm just bringing a little bit more of that pink in by putting it on the hearts there. Okay, so with this nautical blue, what I decided was I wanted a little more contrast between the blue of the sky and the blue of the greenhouse. So I'm just going in and I'm not taking this blue all the way out. I'm just adding it around the leaves and then allowing it to kind of blend and fade. But by adding a little more depth there, it emphasizes the lightness in the greenhouse, making it look more greenhousey. Is that a word? Come on, you're not going to give it to me? I'm never playing Scrabble with you guys. That's how I always win. I just make up words. Oh, shoot. Just kidding. My son I used to do a lot of crossword puzzles and stuff, and I'm a pretty voracious reader, so I've got a good vocabulary, and he used to challenge me because he would bring me words and try and trick me to see if I knew them. And it was a pretty rare day when he would bring me a word that I didn't know, which he found extremely annoying. Towards the end, we had to end it because he was like going into medical dictionaries and things trying to trip me up. Little stinker. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're getting ready to go into the greenhouse. So grab your Prismacolor white. And what you're going to do is you are going to color over everything except for the poles. So I'm going to zoom you in. Hold on. Okay, I'm back. So what we're doing is we're just going over using a medium to firm pressure here. We're going over everything except for the actual greenhouse poles. We want it to look a little hazy. Now, up here at the top, be careful you don't go over the greenery that's on the outside, right? You want to take care that you're only coloring the actual part that's in the greenhouse. So, but once again, just I'm going to go around those outside ones, but everything that's on the inside, we're going to color over. And look how that makes it look a little hazy. Make sure you don't color that segment in the doorway, because we want that to be bright and crisp. But I am pushing. I don't know that I would say I'm quite burnishing, but I'm definitely got a little bit of pressure on this. And I'm even going over the girl. I'm going over everything, leaving those poles by themselves. And then, but everything that's in the greenhouse gets covered with the white Prisma. But look at the difference. Honestly, though, yeah, I really like how this turns out. And feel free to go over it more than once. Do it as many times as you need until you get the look that you want. But look at that doorway. See how I just sharpened my pencil because I had really rubbed it to a nub. But in between those plants, we want it to be a little hazy. And I'm going to do this as many times as I need until I get the look that I'm going for. Don't go over your wood. That's on the outside of the greenhouse. But I'm just kind of going over everything, making sure I got it all because it's kind of hard to see. But I think it adds a really nice effect. What do you guys think? Do you like this effect? I hope Casey, I don't have your number, Casey0811 or something, the young lady that requested this, I hope that she likes how this turned out. Now here I'm going back in with the grays because I realized that I wanted a little more gray to it. And to be fair, I wish I would have just stopped at this point, just with adding this gray. Because I'm really liking how it looks at this moment. If I would have just went in from this moment and added my embellishments, I think I would have really, really liked how this turned out. Now you want to make sure when you're using this darker one, you're not doing those ones in the back. We're just doing the ones that are on the quote unquote outside. Now I realize they're on the outside on the back, but what you're visually seeing is them on the front, which is through the greenhouse. So we only want to do these that are, see, I kind of accidentally did that one, the middle one there. So you got to be kind of careful. So tell me in the comments, do you like it like this? Or do you like it with the metallic that I ended up using? So I realize at this moment you don't know, but at the end of the video, let me know your thoughts. Because I'm really curious. Now here I decide, because I can't leave well enough alone, that I need to add the black. Now that first pole, I should not have added. That is a back pole. And I added that black, and you can see it kind of made it look weird because it's one of those back ones that needs to disappear. And by adding the black, I brought it forward. But I do like the black. This is, when I'm done with this stage, I think that's when I would have ended it, knowing what I know now. But I am curious to hear what you guys think, because you may prefer it with the metallic. I don't know. I'm torn on it. Hey, and feel free to let me know if you don't like it at all. Just don't be mean. Don't make me cry. But I'm always curious what you guys think. But here I am. I'm adding the metallic. Ellie says hi. She's getting up from her nap, giving the mama the kisses, and off she goes. Now this is a Signo Uniball Silver, which is a fantastic pen. And I think part of why I don't like it is because, can you see the black popping through? Well, I decided, I don't like the black popping through because it just looks like I missed, right? And so then I try and color it more, and then it becomes wider. And there's a part of me that says maybe I should have used like a ruler and laid the pen down. Here I'm trying to fix my mistake and push that back a little by adding some more white to it. But, when you fuss with things, that's when you can kind of have problems. That one that I just did, I shouldn't have done either. So pay attention. That one in the middle between the two, they're on the right. That's a back one. But this metallic, like I said, I feel like when I added it, then part of it was shining through, and then I tried to add more, and then it got a little wide, and then it gets a little wonky to where they're not straight up and down. Now this is where I take a white Posca pen and I just add some reflections. This is a matter of personal preference. Do you want 1? Do you want 4? Do you want them here? Do you want them there? The key to these, in my opinion, is to keep them going in the same direction. So you don't want your reflection, see how they're all kind of at the same angle? So I could decide to have less, I could decide to do more, but you don't want to have them in different directions. Now here I'm just putting some highlights on things. We are nearing the end. So I'm just adding dots here. I'm going to cover the lines on her hat. Once again, all of this stuff is personal preference too. just adding a little bit of white at the tips of these leaves, I feel like, especially on both sides, it just adds a little visual interest. Because watch these leaves pop off the page when I do this. And I'm just adding little marks. Nothing fancy pants. And just kind of running it down the line there. I mean, random dots of white in there. The choice is yours, how much or how little of this to do. I have some pages where I do quite a lot, especially whimsical pages. I like the looks of it. There's other pages where I don't do any at all. Most pages I do a little. Now, I could have outlined her whole hat in the white. That's also just a choice. Now, all of these leaves that were on the outside, I went ahead and added a little white, and I really like how that turned out. I just feel like it gave them a little life. So as far as this white, I'm just adding a little flick of white along the tips. I'm not necessarily getting super specific as to, is it the top, is it at the end? It's just a little random bit. Nobody's going to be looking at each individual leaf. Add a little bit of white to my rake. Now, all of these are just personal choice, so do with it what you want. I am using a Sharpie pen in order to add little dots of color on the ground for some visual interest. I am going to go over the little water drips with a Posca marker and just the white. Let them dry completely and then very lightly go over them with your colored pencil later in blue. I'm not sure if that makes it here. Now, as far as this doorway, I just want to make sure that everything in that doorway is saturated in color to where it really lifts from the page. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the boop. Don't forget to boop the like on your way out, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you for watching another video from Jazzydoodledesigns. If you enjoy adult coloring content, please consider subscribing. You can now find me on Instagram and Facebook as well. I welcome all comments and suggestions. Don't forget to like the video before you go. And until next time, take care.